You have no memory of your first birthday, none of your second birthday either, or your third. There might be photos. You blowing out candles. Cake on your face. People laughing. You have zero memory of any of. Someone was there that day. Someone who looked exactly like you, who lived in your body, who felt things and reacted. But that person is a stranger to you now. Not because the memory faded, because it was never stored in the first place. So here's the question that sounds simple but isn't. Why can't you remember? For a long time, the assumption was that babies just don't form memories. Their brains are too undeveloped, too busy growing to body. That explanation felt satisfying then researchers actually tested it, and it turned out. In 2016, neuroscientists ran an experiment on infants as young as 6 months old. They showed the babies a series of images while tracking their brain activity, specifically in the hippocampus, the region responsible. The baby's hippocampi lit up actively, reliably. Their brains were encoding information right there, so the babies were forming memories. If babies are creating memories, why? The answer has almost nothing to do with the baby. It has to do with something scientists call infantile amnesia, and it isn't. Here's the first piece. You probably imagine memory like a filing cabinet. Something happens, it gets written down. That's not how it works. Every memory you have exists as a network of connected neurons. And retrieving a memory means reactivating. Building a network that fast means the wiring keeps shifting. Connections that formed last week get overwritten, replaced, restructured. For that reconnection to work, the network has to be built using a stable structure. A consistent internal map that the rest of the memories aren't lost. They were never given a permanent address. Babies don't have that map yet. Their brains are adding roughly 7. For a while, psychologists thought this was the whole answer. Fast growth, unstable wiring, end of story. But then developmental researchers noticed something odd while comparing memory across different cultures. Memory finally starts sticking isn't the same everywhere. Children in some cultures report earliest memories from around age 3. In others, the average earliest memory doesn't show up until closer to 5 or 6. If this was purely about brain wiring, the gap shouldn't exist. A hippocampus finishes its basic construction on roughly the same timeline in every human being on the planet. So something else had to be going on. Researchers eventually traced part of it to language and storytelling. Children raised in households where parents talk through the day in detail. We went to the park, then you fell down, then we got ice cream. Develop the ability to organize memories into a retrievable narrative earlier than children who don't get that kind of verbal scaffolding, which means memory isn't just about the hippocampus finishing construction. It's about learning to build a story your brain can walk back through later. A memory without a narrative structure is like a room with no door. It might be sitting right there. Which brings up the second major piece, and this is where it gets stranger. In 2020, researchers ran an experiment on infant mice, whose brains go through the same rapid hippocampal construction. They used a technique called optogenetics, essentially using light to switch specific neurons on, to locate the exact memory traces formed during infancy. The traces were still there, fully intact, sitting dormant in the brain years later. When the researchers artificially reactivated those neurons, the adult mice responded exactly as if the original infant memory had come back online. The memory wasn't erased. It was locked. The map connecting to it had simply been rebuilt so many times that the original path no longer existed. Somewhere in your brain right now, there's a version of you that might still technically have that first birthday stored. You just don't have a route to reach it anymore, which means the stranger who blew out those candles isn't gone. You just can't call them. And there's a reason evolution might have built it this way on purpose. A rapidly growing hippocampus that's constantly wiring and rewiring is extremely good at one specific thing: absorbing enormous amounts of new information fast. Learning to recognize faces. Learning language from nothing. Learning which sounds mean danger and which mean safety. A stable, permanent memory system would actually get in the way of that. It would mean locking in details before the brain even knows what's important enough to keep. So the trade-off might be this. You get a few years of the fastest learning your brain will ever do. And the price is that none of it gets filed anywhere you can revisit later. Every memory you're forming this year is only permanent. Here's what that means for you, right now, today. That's not something you had as a baby. It's something you have now, and it's easy to take for granted. It also means the years that shaped you the most, the ones where your personality, your instincts, your earliest sense of safety and danger were being built, happened completely outside the reach of your conscious memory. You didn't choose to be shaped by them. You just were. And you'll never get direct access to see it happen. Think about the things that make you flinch, the situations that make you instantly comfortable or instantly on edge, before you've even consciously registered why. Some of that wiring was laid down in those missing years. Not as a memory you can describe, but as a reflex your body just carries around. The version of you that existed before memory could hold on is still in there somewhere, quietly running the architecture everything else was built on top of. You just met a stranger who turned out to be you. And they built the foundation of the person reading this right now. So here's the question worth sitting with. If the years that shaped you most are the years you can